If it bleeds, we can kill it. Hello everyone, it's Sarah here, ready to bring you another exciting review. And today we're looking at Predator Badlands, which is the 9th film in this franchise. However, the first one set primarily from the Yautja's perspective, which is the Predator. Before we begin though, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel, and if you're on mobile, please hit that hype button, we greatly appreciate it. So the series has been all over the place. In the original film, we got some of the biggest, most badass military dudes on the mission deep in South American jungle, when suddenly they encounter the alien creature. And while these guys look like they could easily take down even the toughest of opponents, the hunter dispatches them one by one without even breaking a sweat. That is, until the last man standing, Dutch. He utilises the hunter's own technology against him, exploiting a weakness, and forces the creature into hand-to-hand combat. The subsequent film tried to capture the same magic, but ultimately failed in many respects, as they seem to have missed what made the first film so impactful: a big-ass, burly muscle head being taken out by something bred to kill. They sort of tried this approach with the 5th film, Predators, where they had all these super trained killers dropped on this alien planet, but again, the magic wasn't there. And we didn't get to see them be badass beforehand. We just heard about it, which was a bit of a letdown. Then the 2018's The Predator introduced us to the Super Predator, and then in Prey they tried to minimise it. And while it was a cool idea, the story felt a bit disjointed, and again I wasn't really feeling the group dynamic with the characters. It was the same underdog story from Predator 2, just set in an even less advanced world. And the main character just did what Dutch did in the original, which, if the Yautja species gathers DNA and records the hunts to learn, then realistically wouldn't they have known about the mud cooling temperature trick that they realised 200 years ago? Regardless, now we come to Predator Badlands, and it continues, issues aside, it does try to really show the audience how their society functions, which it draws heavily from the books and comics in the extended universe. Spoilers are now inbound, we're about to actually talk about the film, so if you wish to avoid any, then please skip to the timestamp on the screen. Let the hunt continue. The film begins with your standard lore dump explaining the Predator's culture, all accompanied with EDM throat singing. We're even on a desert planet, so if I didn't know what I was watching, I probably would have assumed this is a Star Wars movie. Anyway, a fight breaks out between the two hunters with laser swords, talking about fighting with anger. This is all, of course, a training ritual, so that the younger one of the two can earn his special gear upgrades and be sent on his first big hunt. We get a glimpse inside his ship as well, and I'm pretty sure they belong to the family of the one that flew to Earth in Predator 2, because the skulls lining the trophy room are the exact same ones in the exact same spot. That, or they all use the same shitty decorators. The older brother takes the younger one to a kind of holographic map and tells him to pick his prey, then go and hunt it and bring it back, or don't come back at all. He skips past the human silhouette, which seems to be a popular choice, and instead chooses something called a Kalisk, a massive hulking beast creature that apparently has never been captured. The father shows up and basically asks why the young one is still alive, as he's a disappointment to the clan, a weakling. But the older brother stands up for him, telling him he deserves a hunt to prove himself. But Big Daddy ain't having any of it and throws some kind of device at the kid, holding him to the ground, and orders the brother to cut him down. The older brother instead cuts the device in half, then kicks the little guy into the ship and hits autopilot, while turning to face his father, and the two battle it out. The father turns on his cloak, going invisible, and starts whooping the brother's ass, before cutting him into many pieces. The ship takes off as the younger brother screams in anger, watching from the window as he goes off. From a terminal we learn that the younger brother is named Deck. His ship takes a beating from an asteroid field that orbits the planet he arrives at, called Jenna. And so, of course, he crash lands. Immediately, this place gives off Pandora and Skull Island vibes, with giant winged lizards, enormous insect-like creatures, floating mountains, the whole ordeal. After going through his gear and giving us a montage of how all the different things work, he sets off through the jungle when suddenly some kind of tentacled creature begins stalking him, snatching up a little lizard guy behind him, and 3 more spring up out of the foliage and start grabbing at him and fighting him all over the place. Deck busts out the laser sword and starts hacking and slashing, and like a hydra, for each one he cuts in half, 2 more pop up and strike at him. So he grabs one and starts to follow it to the base, because it's gotta be connected to something, right? But unfortunately that quickly backfires, and so he makes a run for it in the opposite direction, and that does seem to work. They have a limit for how far they can reach, success, and roll the title credits. While patching himself up, he sees a grub and is a bit hungry, but when he picks it up, it starts to inflate, so he quickly tosses it away and it explodes like a grenade. Fuck. Seems like everything here is deadly as fuck, even the corn. While he's walking through the fields, the corn is sound sensitive and hisses at him as he walks by. A bunch of spikes popping up out of the top. The silence is suddenly broken by Thea, a Wayland Yutani synthetic who is all kinds of fucked up and stuck in a bunch of spiky brambles. She tries to warn him to stay hidden, but it's too late as one of those big winged lizards fly down, scoots up a rock and throws it at the weird corn plants, which sets them all off. They not only fire a bunch of thorns in all directions, but pop and release some kind of pink misty gas, which I'm sure is probably poisonous. While Deck tries to make his way out of this very fucked up minefield, Thea keeps delivering some exposition. She knows all about the Yahuja, as she's been here a while it seems, and she knows why he came to the planet. Just like the others, he's here hunting Kalisk, and just like the others, he's gonna die. While he gets hit by one of those thorns, and it has a paralysing agent inside of it, and so Thea suggests that before he goes down, toss her his arm blade whirly thing and she will help him out. Which he does, and of course she does help in return, even though she's got no legs. After a moment of rest, she's given an even longer lore dump of the area. Lots of Yahuja, lots of danger, lots of dead things. Now, so clearly the film is trying both the Predator and the Alien universe together. However, this synthetic doesn't quite fit that cold and calculated persona type we see in the Ridley Scott films, and more like the version from Alien Resurrection. Maybe she's got a personality chip, but it's a little off-putting that she acts more like a teenager instead of a research scientist. That does bring me to the recent Alien Earth TV series though, and I'm wondering if she was part of the crew that snagged up all those other alien specimens and maybe got left behind because she was just far too damaged from what happened. That being said, she convinces Deck to take her along, since even though predators hunt alone, she's technically a machine. So it would be like using a tool. Unfortunately, a tool that never shuts up to his dismay, as when they go off on their journey, she constantly blabbers on with questions about his species. On their way to find the Kalisk, we get a montage of more questions, more deadly creatures, and Thea brandishing her knowledge of the environment by using little tricks and whatnot she's learned to keep them from harm, like feeding specific berries to these giant leech worms so that they don't come after Deck, and so forth. Thea drops some more exposition, revealing that there is another synthetic just like her named Tessa, and they are special versions compared to other synths, with some kind of animal sensitivity program so that they can learn and anticipate the wants and needs of creatures to better study, capture and catalogue them. However, since the Kalisk attacked her and her team, she hasn't seen nor heard from her and has no idea if she's even alive. We get the answer to this really quickly, as Tessa is pretty fucked up, but one of the crew has brought her back to their ship and put her in the repair pod. Good as new, now with some new upgrades. It also seems like Wayland can see and hear everything Thea is up to and knows she's with Deck. and instructs Tessa to not only retrieve the Kalisk, but also Dek as well. Flashing back over to Dek and Thea, they find a field of something called razor grass, which is like grass made out of crystal blades, and there's some big beasties grazing in it. A weird monkey creature comes out of the tree and alerts a big rhino looking thing, and they take off, and so of course Dek heads after them, as he's proven to be a lot more headstrong than tactical. He gets knocked out of the way by an alien monkey and starts brawling with it when the rhino thing spots him and charges at him. With some quick thinking and quicker reflexes, Dek tosses the monkey aside, pulls out that laser sword and throws it at the rhino. And it gets cut in half, but then some squid-like tentacles show up and pull Dek and Thea up into the treetops. It's a lunar bug, and once again Thea delivers her knowledge while Dek just pulls out another blade and starts cutting them all loose. The lunar bug then goes after the monkey, and Dek uses this distraction to climb up to the top of the trees and jump onto its back and kill it by stabbing it in the brain. Victory and lunch. Meanwhile, Tessa, all shiny and new, set out with her synth squad and find the Crash Predator's ship. Using her skills, she finds a secret compartment in the trophy room housing a bunch of weapons that Dek probably doesn't know about, since this is his brother's ship. Night passes and so does most of another day, and Dek and Thea are back on their journey while Thea is explaining what it means to be in a pack, using a wolf as an example. They come across a kind of old campground, Thea's old hangout, where there's wreckage everywhere, and there's her legs. Using a still somehow functioning repair pod, she's able to put herself back together. Now she can walk on her own again. Even though he's not used to it, she thanks him and he tells her that he will remember this day as well, as it is finally the day he makes his brother proud when he kills the Kalisk, and she will be the first one to see his trophy. But then she drops a bombshell on him. Once she's repaired herself, it's alerted the other synths, and they'll be here in a moment or two, and they will take Kalisk and they'll also take him as well. He needs to go, but pride over sense, and he decides he's going to stand his ground. He decides to set fire to some things and walk away, with vehicles blowing up behind him into big plumes of fire and smoke. Of course, seconds later, the Kalisk shows up, and without any kind of fanfare, the fight begins. I was a bit disappointed during this part, as they made out this thing to be an unbeatable obstacle, but it's just like any of the other monsters. In this film, it can regenerate. Of course, it's going to be Tess who's going to be the real villain here. Using the junk around the area, he manages to trap the creature and then lunges onto it and cuts its head off. But it regenerates, as you need to destroy the brain. But wait, it kind of smells something on him. It smells that little monkey alien, and it suddenly becomes friendly. An ice grenade unfortunately goes off, and both Dek and the Kalisk are frozen and taken captive by Tessa, of course. Dek wakes up a few hours later on board of the synth ship and notices that Tessa and Thea are identical, and Thea has momentarily been turned off while Tessa performs all sorts of studies on him. He huffs and puffs, but he ain't going nowhere, and Tessa informs him he is now property of Weyland-Yutani Corporation, which definitely sets this film a few decades after Alien Earth but before Aliens. Thea reboots, and as Tessa basically tortures Dek, Thea objectifies and even tries to convince Tessa of empathy, that they two could be more and be sisters. But Tessa is being run by Mother, the ship onboard's computer AI. When Tessa leaves the room to contact home, Thea speaks to Dek in his language and apologises, and the two make sort of a half-wit plan for escape. Using one of his devices, a literal children's toy that makes one of these other synths' heads explode, Thea then slams the airlock button and Dek is able to escape. Well, not only do they have his trophy, the Kalisk, but he's kind of bonded with Thea and wants to rescue her as well, because she's not like the others and she's a useful tool. So he patches himself up, rages out over some memories of his father and brother, and gets ready to fuck some shit up. On board his ship, while looking for some gear, he hears the voice of his late brother, which leads him to his brother's old armour and some very basic equipment. Deck then makes his way to the razorgrass field to make himself a spear, and then to the strange corn plants to get some of that toxin, and basically pulls a Dutch from the original Predator film, setting up some old school traps and whatnot. It's kinda nice that the synths have given him all this time to do this instead of turning around immediately after he escaped and recapturing him. He also tracks down the little monkey guy as he's learned the value of having a pack from Thea. Using those spitting slugs during the montage from earlier in the film, they apparently spit stuff like the xenomorph acid, and it melts right through any synthetic it hits. So Deck infiltrates the research station and starts taking out the guards stealthy ninja style. While all this is going on, Thea, who is locked inside of a shipping crate, somehow remote pilots her legs to find their way towards her. Also karate kicking and taking out other simps, which is both absurd but also kind of funny. While all this is happening, Tessa is loading the Kalisk onto the cargo ship and preparing for takeoff. Deck and Thea reunite, and the two, along with Bud the monkey, form their own wolf pack and go after the Kalisk together. But it turns out that Bud is actually the Kalisk's child, so it's no longer about getting a trophy, it's about growing and protecting their pack. Tessa is also able to just 3D print more synths whenever she wants, so the two sides meets at the battle line and the fight begins. Heads explode, limbs are severed, and milky white blood covers everything in sight until Tess shows up in a fucking power loader. Well, this one isn't just for cargo hauling, it's also equipped with some weapons. Thea breaks into the cargo ship and releases the Kalisk, and then Tessa is busy fighting off the Kalisk, and Deck makes his way to the back of her power loader suit and rips out its electronic guts, causing it to shut down and leaving Tessa defenseless. Or is she? She's somehow integrated some of the Predator tech she stole, including the arm cannon, and gets ready to blast it when, chomp, the Kalisk bites her in half and swallows. Now that mommy and baby are reunited, it seems that Deck has finally found a new family. But the Kalisk begins to grunt in pain, and suddenly it starts to freeze from the inside out and then explodes. Oh shit. Tessa ain't done yet, and the blast sends Thea, Deck and Bud flying in different directions, and Tessa emerges from the pile of guts that once was the Kalisk. Using the shoulder cannon, she targets Thea, and just before she can fire, Deck severs her spine, leaving Tessa immobile, and finally, Bud hops over and rips her head off, cheering to victory. The trio then repair the ship and board and head back to Deck's homeworld. One last thing to take care of. Deck exits the spacecraft and in front of all the clan elders calls out his father. Deck wants his cloak. He has completed his hunt and even presents Tessa's head as a trophy. But the father denies him and orders his guards to kill Deck. Deck makes short work of him, and so the father pulls out the blade and begins to attack, and the two go at it. Again, the father kind of cheats here using his cloak, but Deck outsmarts him, using the ship's engine to whirl up a bunch of sand and debris, which sparks off the cloak and gives away his position, and then he stabs his father in the gut. He then takes out the trap thing from his belt and this time restrains his father before him on his knees, pulling his mask off. Suddenly, the father's tone changes and welcomes him to the clan, but Deck is not having any of it, and Bud, who has grown much bigger, comes out the ship and eats his father. Deck grabs the cloak off his father's armour, equips it and howls. The end. Or wait, one more thing. As Deck looks angrily to the horizon, a bunch of ships approach, and he prepares for battle. Thea asks, "Who are they?" And he replies, "My mother." And that wraps it up. I'll say this off the bat, it was much more entertaining than I thought it was going to be, and leaps and bounds better than the last few films that have come from this franchise, including the animated one. It felt very comic booky, and a lot of it clearly inspired by other great sci-fi franchises, as I mentioned throughout the breakdown. Now, there are a bunch of rumours that AI was used to help with the script, so that would explain a lot of what happened. But regardless, I had fun watching it, so we give the film a 7.5 out of 10. A little bit wonky CGI in spots, too many moments of exposition dumps, rehashing everything we had just seen, and the world building kind of works against everything that's been established in the other films, but overall, worth seeing on the big screen. I want to thank you all for checking out the video. What do you think of the film? Which movie is your favourite in the franchise? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed our content, please give us a like, comment and share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that hype button if you're on mobile, as well as the bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest releases. Thank you for being here with me today. I've been Sarah, and I greatly appreciate it. Take care and goodbye.